Welcome to Cure Your Fatigue with Morley Robbins. In this episode, Morley talks with Pam Robinson about chronic stress reduction and a methodology she uses called Integrative Processing Technique. Pam established the Institute of Healing Arts to teach IPT and offer IPT therapy. She's also written several books about IPT, including The Bright Red Bow, One Woman's Journey to Inner Peace. We hope you enjoy this discussion with Pam Robinson.
Well, good morning, Pam. It's a
Good
delight to
morning,
have you
Morley.
here.
I'm so excited to be here.
I feel the same way. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. And I know that our followers are really going to enjoy this because, as you probably know, we put a particular emphasis on dealing with stress as part of the recovery. And it seems that a lot of people give it lip service, but you take it to a completely different level of understanding. And I really want to kind of pick at that and find out. I have a feeling there's a story behind your passion, and and really get a better understanding of how you came to develop this whole concept of integrative processing technique. I think it's going to be a really fun conversation, but I think it'll be very helpful for our listeners. So I will stop with that and really thank you again for taking the time, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say as it relates to that opening volley.
Well, thank you. I'd love to share a little bit about how I got involved with integrative processing technique, or basically emotional health release work. It's very powerful. It makes a difference in people's lives. And I personally became involved because of my own story and because
Yeah.
of my own pain. So I was going to share a little bit about that. And so
Yeah,
as we get
please do.
started, I was the mother of 5 beautiful children. I had just had my 5th baby, and she was 8 months old. I was experiencing some postpartum depression. I
Mm.
wasn't a very happy camper, and neither was anyone in my home, basically. She was a beautiful baby, but she wasn't sleeping at night, and I was having a difficult time. My mom suggested that I visit a gentleman who used this technique, and when I went in, I wasn't sure exactly what he was going to do, but he used muscle testing, applied
Mm.
kinesiology. He
Sure.
engaged the body. And, Bessel van der Kolk, with his book, The Body Keeps the Score, he
Right.
says that in
Right.
order to
Well,
release different emotions, heavy emotions, or trauma from the body, that we need to engage in the intelligence of the body. Muscle testing does that. And as he was muscle testing, he identified that I was kind of emotionally blocked at 13 months old. And at 13 months old was the exact time that I had been in a car accident and had
mm.
110 stitches put in my face. In those days, we didn't have car seats. My dad
No.
had was trying to pass a car and hit the car in front of him, and I flew forward, hitting the radio knobs. My face was
Oh,
laid open. They were worried about whether I'd be able to keep my eyesight. I was in surgery for 4 hours. It was really quite a trauma and had
wow.
haunted me my whole life. Now, as a 13-month-old, you can't really, um, oh, talk about it or tell people other places in your body
No.
that were hurting.
Yeah.
But as I went into that process, I'm going to take just a minute and share the rest of this because it's really quite remarkable with what happened. But this facilitator asked me who the little baby might be mad at, because here I am in my 30s, and now we're revisiting this trauma. And
Right.
I didn't realize that past trauma can contribute to depression, exhaustion, fatigue, and other physical symptoms. And that's what I'd been experiencing. And I said I was mad at God, and he let me kind of talk to God. And we used
Oh,
a technique called NLP, neuro linguistic
yeah.
programming, just a small portion of that in this whole umbrella of the modalities that we've put together to organize a system that is effective in releasing trauma and heavy feelings. And so I put that feeling into a black triangle. The anger towards God, I talked about it. I was crying. it was like it was coming up, and it was ready for me to work on.
Wow. That's
And
amazing.
and then as we continued, he said, "Well, what did the baby decide about herself?" And I said, "I decided that I was ugly, that I was repulsive, that people would
Wow.
not want to look upon me, that somehow I couldn't be accepted because there was damage done to my face."
Right.
And he said, "Well, would you like to stop doing ugly?" I said, "I don't think we can stop doing ugly." I said, I was in a car accident. I have scars on my face, and I don't think we can fix that." And he said, "We can't make it so it didn't happen, but we can reframe the way the little baby's holding it."
Right.
And I said, "Well, I would love that. I just don't know if it's possible or even how to do it." And he said, with a little bit of willingness, and if I was willing to let go of some of the programming and the belief that I
Mhm.
had
Right.
bonded to in the trauma, that it could lift. And so with that little bit of hope, I imagined all of that heaviness coming out of me, going into a shape and a color, and it was more black shapes, more black triangles, rectangles, squares. And as that lifted, there was a little space in my heart where I could literally feel a change happening. And
Wow.
something shifted, and I was able to, just in my mind's eye, uh, embrace a truth that a perception that I had never considered before. And that is that you can be in a car accident, have 110 stitches in your face, and still be beautiful.
Mm.
The baby didn't know that the doctors would be able to put her face together, that
Right.
it wasn't always going to be this way. That her little brain that was developing and looking at things in black and white, that
Mhm.
either or, all or nothing, that there could be this possibility that my body could heal, that my face could heal.
Right.
And it wasn't the physical scars that needed help. It wasn't that part of me that needed emotional first aid. It was my heart, the
Right.
scars in my heart that needed help. And as I continued to do this work, there were several things that started to change in my life.
I think it's absolutely an affirmation of what we talk about and what I understand the power of this trauma, basically changing your whole physiology and and
Yes,
and your whole and your whole emotional outlook. And I don't think enough people understand how powerful this is. And that's really why it's so exciting to have this conversation.
for sure. So then I was going to share, I started to do some research about what this particular technique can do and what it can't do. And I know it
Right.
can't do everything, but as we basically edit or delete old programs or heavy emotions or belief systems, it frees up energy in the body so that we then have a lot more joy and happiness and passion. So
Mhm.
let me just continue the story a little bit.
Yeah.
I ended up experiencing and recognizing three powerful truths that were manifesting in my life. And the very first truth that I came to, or that I was researching, is that the process has power to change behavior, it has power to heal the body, and it has power to change relationships. So I'm going to share
Mhm.
a little bit about how it changed my behavior.
Mhm.
So you need to know, and I'm going to admit that I had a swearing problem when I was in my early parenting. And I really
Okay.
didn't learn how to swear until I had children. And somehow these same words
You're
would
inspiring.
come forward in the mornings when I was trying to get the kids on the bus for
Yeah.
school. I didn't want to be late. I didn't want to to have to drive them in my pajamas and my bed hair. And
Yeah.
the day after the process, what I experienced was all this pressure building up. We had slept in, we were behind. I was yelling at the kids. I don't know why we yell. We think it's going to help, but it doesn't really help. They don't go any faster.
No, they don't.
The bus was going to be there, and I ended up really going to swear. This is the day after the process, less than 24 hours. And the words I could hear way far back in my head, but I could not say them. They didn't come out. They didn't come out. There was a change. The only thing that had changed in my life was that I had participated in an integrative processing session, and somehow the work that I had done the day before was able to change the behavior that I had been working on so hard and struggling with. I didn't really want to be swearing. I mean, my 3-year-old was starting to swear, and my husband knew it was me because she was using the very same words that I was using. These
Sure.
patterns that get passed down, right?
Absolutely.
And so I ended up recognizing later that when you have unresolved issues towards God and you go to the age of origination where the anger towards God was embraced and we kind of glommed onto it,
Right.
and we release that the swearing isn't really necessarily something that needs to be a symptom of unresolved anger towards God. And so just by resolving some of that, I was able to have a handle or have more control over my
Yeah.
language.
I've never heard anything like that, but it makes so much sense. And
Right.
when I'm working with clients, and I'm sure you experience this regularly, I'm amazed at the number of people who've had a traumatic experience,
Hmm.
not quite like yours, but they've had some kind of trauma in their life. And the number of people who think they're being punished by God
Hmm.
is amazing.
Hmm.
I would say it's a majority of people, and that they don't know what to do with that thought, that feeling. It just absolutely ties them in knots. And I think it's a very pervasive reaction that people have. But I'm sure you've experienced it in your practice as well. But I just think it's important for people to realize that that's not an uncommon reaction to have to, when bad things happen to good people, right? I mean,
Right.
what are we supposed to do with that?
What are we supposed to do with it? And it feels like that he was punishing us. Like I was angry towards God because he didn't save me or rescue me or protect me. He allowed me to go through that experience. And I
Right,
didn't understand why. I didn't understand that his love could include allowing me those kinds of experiences
right,
instead of thinking that this must be a message that that I've done something wrong or that he's mad at me.
yeah,
And I think it's more in our mature selves that we can come to understand that he's not punishing us and that he does love us, that these experiences give us learning and wisdom and knowledge. It's really hard to really wrap our brains around that in our humanness, for sure.
absolutely, yeah,
For sure. The second thing that I learned, or that I was researching, is that the process has power to heal the body.
mm,
And as I continue to do more processing and unpacking other emotional beliefs and perceptions around this experience, I came to understand that by the time I was 7, my mom was trying to help me manage pain.
mm,
I had neck pain, stomach aches, I had leg aches, I had a lot of back pain back here on my neck. I was going to different chiropractors. I was sleeping on funny pillows. We were trying all kinds of protocol because I
mm,
had a lot of pain in my body. And as we
mm,
started to unpack the emotional components or elements linked to this physical trauma, my body didn't need to continue to send so many pain signals to me
mm,
because we were
right,
addressing the root of the problem where the emotions had been stored in the body and then continually trying to get my attention to do something about that emotional pain. And as I started to move through the emotional pain, my body started to heal. I didn't suffer with waking up in the morning in a lot of pain. I was able to continue to find those modalities that would help me with my pain and be successful with the outcome and the results. And when you think about it, I was living in the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or
Sure.
flight mode or freeze or
Sure.
fawn mode. And as we went back to the trauma, we were able to help the body move to the parasympathetic nervous system, where I could finally relax and heal. And that became the norm. That became the new normal. I was
Right.
spending 80% of my time in this beautiful, calm space of feeling safe, that accident was not going to repeat itself, that I didn't have to respond to everything like it was a life and death situation, which is what I
Right.
was doing in my adulthood, is responding like a 13-month-old emotionally in an age regress state over spilled milk or little things that really aren't a life and death situation. My brain was able to separate that out, and I was more mature. I became emotionally more mature. And I started to treat myself different and better, and the people around me. Um,
That's just, I mean, it's so exciting to hear about it. It's just, I think um, it's so important for people to hear this, so that they know this mechanism exists, or that there are modalities that allow that to happen. I guess the quick question I would have is pain just stuck emotion? Is that really what it represents? I mean, I know
I think that
there's
all
probably some other
pain
things. Yeah,
has an emotional component.
yeah, yeah.
And I do think that the body has great capacity to heal. Our bodies are so beautiful,
Amazing.
and they
Absolutely.
really can heal, like all the tissues around my face and the scar tissue and everything. Like it knew how to heal itself, but it
Right.
needed help with being able to heal the emotional component. For example, if you were to ask me how I digest my food, I would say, I don't know,
You don't
because
need to.
we have parallel processes that are subconscious, that are actually running themselves and really operate in beautiful form and digest our food for us, remind us to blink, help us
Yeah.
to breathe. And I don't have to think about that part, right?
Yeah.
And then
I
we
get it.
have a binary processor that really is just zeros and ones. And
Yeah.
that's really just our left brain. And it thinks it knows everything. It
Of
can
course.
it can remember up to 7 numbers at a time, 7 bits of information.
Right.
It's fear-based. It tries to keep us safe. It's like on guard all the time. And it's designed to be that way. But these two parts of the brain in trauma, they become disconnected or disassociated.
Interesting.
And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, we don't have peace. We don't have joy, which is our true nature. We don't have love for ourselves or others. We can't figure out how to return to where we were before the accident. And what I recognize is that this work helped integrate these two parts of my brain. The parallel processor that was running all by itself and healing my body, but my mind and the decisions that I'd made about the process were not accurate. So pain can be a symptom or a reflection of,
Right.
of perceptions that aren't accurate. And then
Yeah.
when I
And
came to the truth, these two parts of the brain were able to integrate, come together. I was able to come to a place of wholeness, WHOLENESS, which generates healing. And it moves us out of dis-ease.
yeah,
Dis-ease is when these two parts of us are in a disconnected state. The
which
third
makes so much
thing that
sense.
I learned
Yeah. Right.
through all this research, and I've been using my own story as the research and then
Right.
working with other people as well. But the third thing that I learned is that the process has power to change relationships. So I'm going to share
Yeah.
this last little event here that happened after a few
Mhm.
years of diving deep and doing my work, because I was curious. I wanted to know what the results would be. Plus, I could see that it was making a difference. I came home one day The kids hadn't really finished their chores. The house was in disarray. There'd been some verbal communication that they were supposed to have it done, and it wasn't. And when I came home, I was upset. I wasn't like I used to be, but I
Right.
was starting to raise my voice and trying to get everybody's attention and getting them all to get their chores done. And as I started to escalate just a little bit, my 14-year-old son, 6'3" at the time, said to me the most heartwarming thing that anybody's ever said to me. It was a response that caught me off guard. So here I am, just focused on trying to get the responsibilities done. And he paid me this compliment that touched me so much. He said, "Mom, you haven't yelled for so long. I forgot how funny you looked." Now, when you think about that, I could have really been offended and tried to hold on to my authority and said, "What are you talking about? When the mom is mad, you shouldn't really be laughing, for one
Yeah.
thing."
That's right.
And then to say, "Well, you look funny when you're angry," that doesn't feel so good. But it was what he was saying that I was able to hear. "Mom, you haven't yelled for so long." He acknowledged and could see that my behavior was changing, that the way
Yeah.
that I was communicating and managing my anger, every time I would go in and process, it would reduce the amount of anger that I was experiencing in present time because I was doing the deep work and
Yeah.
going to the age of origination where the anger had been stored, working through it with productive anger releases in a way that was minimizing and reducing how much I was having to pack around and carry around. And my
Right.
children, my son noticed. That was powerful. It was
Very powerful.
profound.
Yeah. Absolutely. When you're talking about the separation of the two brains, um, now I understand what the integrative means. I had never really understood that, but I'm reminded when you were talking about healing, your body knew how to heal itself. Um, One of my favorite interviews was with Carl Sagan, and he was talking about the sophistication of our body. That if we decide we're going to have lunch, we're going to have a sandwich. That's our conscious thought. I'm going to decide that I'm going to have a sandwich. He said, what we're not aware of are the 10,000 chemical reactions that are put into play once you say I'm going to have a sandwich to get ready for absorbing and digesting that food. We don't think about the sophistication of our body. And in your situation, the healing process. I mean, to go geek on you, there's an enzyme called hyaluronic acid. And if hyaluronic acid doesn't have its quotient of copper, it can't heal tissue. So there's a very precise mechanism, but the point is that is superseded by this stress release that you are engaged in that process. That's just so beautiful, and I think is it something um, that you found is it intermittent, or is it like, do we do it regularly, or do we do it only when we've had trauma? Because I think people are always wondering, how deep into this rabbit hole do I need to go? I think the more time we spend with it, I think the more healing is going to take place. But what are some boundaries around that in terms of how people would approach that?
Sure. That's a really good question. And not everybody has experienced this kind of trauma,
No,
and there
no,
can
no.
be all kinds of different levels of trauma. And
Yeah,
so when we look at this, there's a beautiful quote that says, "The illiterate of our time will not be those who cannot read and write, but rather
mhm.
those who cannot learn, unlearn, and
Yep,
relearn." So
absolutely.
this is, and it's by Alvin Toffler, I think. Yes,
Tougher.
and it's a
That's right.
common quote, and I love it
Yep,
because when we're processing, we're basically going through an unlearning process. We are unlearning old belief systems, the way we see ourselves, the way we see our world. And these usually are established early on in our childhood, in early childhood, or in elementary school, or junior high or high school, where these beliefs are made out of misinformation and
Right.
how we've interpreted what's happening. It could be as simple as a teacher making a comment to us that we didn't understand, or didn't understand why they were mad at the whole class, mad at me. And
Right.
we internalize it and we add it to other experiences that we've had where mom got mad at me or dad got mad at me, and then I'm the problem. And what the
Right.
processing does, it can be as simple as that. And then shame is involved, or guilt, or feeling like I'm not good enough or lovable. We all have an internal program, a narrative that is running 24/7. And the process has the capacity to invite the body through the muscle testing to identify what age we need to work on and what needs in this great big ball of yarn and all the information and how it's been stored. It helps us to know what to pull on next to unravel some of these misperceptions or belief systems that aren't true. I think pain comes when we're operating from belief systems that aren't accurate. And I do
Oh,
believe that it generates fatigue as well, for sure.
yeah. As you're describing this, I had a thought that it's never manifested before. But does one side of the brain simply react to the crisis, and that it's the other side of the brain that needs to really get engaged for recovery? Because it seems like, as you're describing it, there's a difference between the reaction to the crisis and then the recovery because of the
Hmm.
crisis. And is it when you bring the brains together that they can actually fuse and integrate their capacity? But it just seems like the sympathetic nervous system, highly reactive, but it's not really into resolution. It's just trying to get a level of stability just so you can keep going. But I don't think it's really concerned with recovery at a much deeper level. Does that make sense? Does that seem valid to you?
Sure. I I do believe that in serious trauma, the brain stays in shock.
Yeah,
We stay
exactly.
in a state of shock. And in that shock, what happens is there's disassociation, different parts. We're a little bit fragmented. We are trying to cope then after that from a place of shock.
Right.
And I kind of, a good analogy maybe is to see that sometimes trauma, which is called a somatic marker in the brain,
Mhm.
it's like trying to heal a pie. And when we go
Right.
in and do some of the work, it is like just trying to eat one slice of that pie, trying to
Right.
digest what happened. It's most interesting. I have had a lot of digestive issues in my life.
Mhm.
And a lot of the secondary symptoms of what I went through was in my stomach, based in
Sure.
my stomach, digestive issues and problems. And sure, I do have some genetic and generational issues with enzyme production and
Mhm.
different things that are needed to digest. And I don't know if the emotional trauma caused some of those digestive problems, or if the digestive problems itself caused me to not be able to recover from the trauma very well. I think
Right.
it's all of it. I think it's
Yeah.
all of it. And when we work on the emotional part, my digestive system has improved because we see the stomach as a second brain. It
Mhm.
is the second brain, and food is information. And if we have if we have a blocked flow of emotional information, we're not going to be able to digest our food very well. But if we can open up those channels to digest the information, that's all we're doing when we're digesting that pie or the somatic marker, is working on it one slice at a time until pretty soon the energy's flowing clean and pure, and
Right.
there is no triggers, there's no emotional charge, there's
Right.
no age regression and going back to some of those feelings. We stay mature. The things that would normally trigger us pass through us, and we are not triggered. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful work that we're able to do.
And you've been engaged in this for how many years?
Okay, so I have been involved in this work, uh, let's see, for 30 years. My
Oh,
youngest
wow.
daughter is 30 now.
Okay.
And I have 9 grandkids, and I love them so much. They
Yeah.
make life so worth it, don't they? They really
Yes,
do.
indeed. I've got
Um,
8. Yeah.
and
Okay.
I've continued my research, so I've probably um, facilitated over 20,000 sessions because I've wanted to be able to research what it can do, what it can't do, and how it can help elevate our thinking, help us to connect to our true sense of worth and value, and help us to see that how we've perceived our life in the past doesn't have to be our reality in present time, or nor do we need to carry that into the future. So
Right.
basically, I'm a computer programmer. I'm working with the
Mm.
mind, body, and spirit. We're defragmenting memories that
Right.
take up storage space, that deplete our energy.
Right.
And then once
So
that's been defragmented, we feel renewed,
that's so funny.
energized. We are experiencing more of our core self and the energy that we had when we were little, the creativity, the creative problem solving. We're able to access some of who we were before we became so inundated with, not having enough storage. Pain,
Mhm.
fatigue can be a symptom of saying, you know how my phone says you need to update your data, you
Right.
need to manage your
Mhm.
data. That's what we're doing.
That's a huge way to think of it. I'm
Hmm.
just curious, over that 30-year period, what how would you characterize the change in your clients? Are they different today than they were 30 years ago? And if so, how are they different? Are they more sensitive to stress? Because that would be my hypothesis, is that because of the weakening of our mineral mass, we're more reactive to our environment. But I'm just wondering, I don't want to bias your
Oh,
response, but I'm
no.
just curious, what have you witnessed over that 30-year period in terms of just the resilience and the capacity of your clients to deal with untoward events?
Sure. I'm seeing that people are able to access their resilience. And actually, what we do towards the end of the process, so we
Mhm.
go in and we clean out the heavy, and
Right?
then we address some generational issues where some of these patterns have been passed down through what has been modeled to us, uh, nurture,
Mhm.
and what
Right?
has been passed down genetically through the DNA, nature. And we
Right?
address some of that and do some uh, re rewriting of that, scripting. And then we harvest the gold, which is being able to focus on the gifts and strengths that we developed while we were holding on to these misperceptions or
Mhm.
immature behaviors
Right?
that really didn't match our core self. Now, the harvesting the gold stimulates the pituitary gland and the pineal gland in such a way that it helps the endocrine system to move from spaces where we might have faith versus faithlessness. You see,
Mhm.
there's an emotional component to every organ and system in the body. For
Yeah.
example, the pituitary gland, usually when someone is having an underactive pituitary gland or an overactive pituitary gland, they're viewing the world through the lens of faith or faithlessness. They
Mhm.
either believe that things can work for them or it can't. So when people are languaging where they're at, I can hear these organs speaking. The pituitary gland would be saying, nothing works for me. And people stay stuck in their poor health because they don't believe that they're worthy of it or that it can happen for them, or they've been in poor health for so long that they don't know anything different.
Right. Yeah.
And in those kinds of conditions, I do see people's health improve. And maybe they are putting faith into the protocol that they are using at the time, and that it actually can start working for them, and they are accepting it, because the mind is powerful. It can block the effect of anything working for us. If I put our mind to it, that can happen. Or it
No
can
question.
open up and accept what is being done for the body.
Right. Now, in developing this technique, I know you've studied a lot of techniques. You have a working knowledge of a lot of different approaches. Can you share with the audience what are kind of the main modalities that people can use to move beyond these types of emotional events? But, what is particularly unique about the integrative processing technique? Why does it stand out in the way that it does? It would be
Okay.
helpful to learn more about that.
Okay. So it's several modalities organized in such a way that it can address a lot of things in an accelerated rate.
Right.
So a lot of people have done lots of therapies, and please know that I believe with all my heart that the modalities that intend to do good out there are making a difference as well. And that therapies, traditional therapy, talk therapy, are very, very helpful.
Yeah.
And I have seen great results with those that have already been participating in other modalities that come in and do this work. They've already moved lots of sediment, old baggage. They've already done a lot of work. But the thing that this particular technique does is we work with psychoneuroimmunology, which is how thoughts and feelings affect our health. For example, the kidneys oftentimes can be a source of fatigue. They can be overworked. They can be exhausted. They can be affected by emotional belief systems that are connected to fear. So the kidneys are very connected to fear, belief, false beliefs about God, or fear of God, fear that I'm going to be punished. And it also, the kidneys have to do with the fear of death and sometimes survival issues.
Right.
The adrenal glands have to do with a belief that life is hard, that there is no joy, that suffering is what our life is about, and that if we're not suffering, we're not good people. We might not recognize that maybe we don't need to suffer and that we could have joy. The thyroid has to do with the belief that it's never my turn, that everybody else is more important than I am, and that I don't have a voice.
A voice, right.
Yes. And so there is a system in the body and that reveals where some of the emotional charge has been being stored. And we use shapes and colors through visualization to help move the heavy toxic emotions. And the interesting thing is that, for example, red, whenever it shows up, is always anger. The liver holds on to deep-seated sadness and deep-seated anger. And so I'm proposing that if we can help the body emotionally clear and defragment old memories, heavy feelings, that it would be able to help stimulate and help energy channels flow to those organs in better ways. And then we can have more energy, more joy, and better health.
And where our two worlds come together, because we're tracking 100% with what you're saying. What a lot of people may not know is that if you don't have adequate copper in your diet, and most people don't. If you don't have adequate copper in your diet, iron is going to build in your liver. The liver's right here under the right rib cage. Starts to fill up with iron, and that iron is what becomes the anger. And so, what people are maybe not fully aware of is how distorted our food system is today compared to their ancestors because of all the different fortification programs and things we've got. But that we're missing minerals. We're basically Swiss cheese, eating Swiss cheese, and we don't have the proper complement of minerals, but it is affecting the metabolism of iron. And you get iron messed up in your body, it's going to mess up your organs. And I would wonder if the fear of the kidney isn't iron building in the kidney, where the life is hard isn't iron building in the adrenal glands. And people don't realize that these organs and endocrine glands do in fact take on iron as we get older, especially if we've been through trauma. So I just wanted to share that what has been a surprise to me of late, I'm doing a course on anemia, and of course we're supposed to believe that a third of the world's population is anemic. That's over 2 billion people. I don't buy it, but that's what we're supposed to believe. But what I've learned is that when we have something called chronic social defeat stress or repeated restraint stress, those are models for stress that are used to see how does the body respond. You're dabbling in that all day long, and you and your colleagues. But what they do, those emotions, that sense, that perception of stress, shuts down the iron metabolism, shuts down the iron recycling system. And then iron looks low on a blood test when in fact it's filling up the organs. And there's a very precise mechanism. We don't need to get into it right now, but I think playing in the background of your clients is what I would argue is copper iron dysregulation that's playing out, and it's compounding the emotional impact of the trauma because they can't mobilize energy in a proper way to get that resilience that you're talking about. That's what I'm piecing together as I work with people dealing with their sets of emotions and setbacks. But I think it's fascinating that these emotions are real. They are organ based, and I think, I mean, I think it was the Chinese that came up with that model a few thousand years ago. I mean, what do they know, right? But no, it's just amazing that your intervention can begin to untie those knots, which I think is beautiful. That's what's so amazing, is that process of discovery and of release is what allows the healing to begin to unfold, which is, I just think that's amazing.
That's beautiful. Oh, I agree with everything you said. And thank you for bringing in and being in that physical realm and the components that are going on physically, and then recognizing that the physical does affect the emotional,
Oh
and the
my God.
emotional affects the physical. And we try to say what has more impact, or what is really um, uh, more important, and they're both important. And I guess my
Yeah.
message is that I'm saying that we can support the body in being able to function better and release certain chemicals in the brain, the feel-good chemicals, and the different systems in the body can start to work a little bit better, connect, and start vibrating at a different frequency. David
Right.
Hawkins, which I love his work, Power versus Force,
Right.
wrote several books, and
Right.
identified that emotions vibrate or calibrate at different frequencies. And that
Absolutely.
shame is the lowest vibrating emotion that we carry in our body. It calibrates at 20 on a scale from 0 to 1,000.
Right.
And it actually, these waves, we know, it's a slower vibrating wave. We carry it in our gut, on our face, around our wrists and around our ankles, shackles of shame. And then when we're addressing that emotion, and there's generational shame, there's social shame,
Mm-hmm.
there is religious shame. There's all kinds of shame that we're carrying that is so heavy. And guilt calibrates at 20. Also, uh, anger calibrates at 50. Sadness calibrates at 75. Fear
Mm-hmm.
calibrates at 100. Anger
Mm.
calibrates at 150. We actually have to move some of these heavier, sluggish
Right.
emotions into anger and release it in productive
Right.
ways at the age of origination so that then we can continue up that scale, which is courage calibrates at 200 and willingness calibrates at 310. Love calibrates at 500. Joy calibrates at 540. Gratitude calibrates at 770. And enlightenment and truth calibrates at 1000. So as we work to
Wow.
move ourselves out of these heavy emotions and see them really just as indicators, they're just helping us to know that our thinking isn't
Right.
accurate or that we are carrying something that doesn't belong to us or that we are in an unsafe place and need to do something in some of these abusive relationships to get ourselves to a safer place. So from my perspective, all emotions are good. The
Oh,
heavier emotions below 200 really are just indicators helping us to know that we need to change the oil in our car or that
right.
we
No.
need to,
Right.
that we need gas. So those emotional indicators are there to
Mhm.
help us. And rather than judging them or thinking that we're bad or wrong because
Right.
we are experiencing that, it's part of the human body, part of our human experience, but it doesn't make us wrong or bad. And when we listen to those emotions, understand where they're coming from, why they're there, work to release them, we don't have to carry them anymore. And then we can reconnect to the truth about our core worth and value and experience joy, um, passion, connection, and love in beautiful ways in a higher vibrating way. So that's what I'm trying to express here.
No, beautiful. Very well done. I remember many years ago, I was going through a rough patch, and a very dear friend of mine she was a psych nurse, and she said, Morley, it's okay to feel sad, but don't feel bad. There's a difference, and that was a very wise bit of
I love
advice for her
that.
to give me. And so when I started this work, I was very Newtonian. It's a physical problem. You know, you need a mineral, you need a vitamin, you need some nutrient, you need to change your diet, whatever. And I can honestly say that over the course of 16 years, I flipped now, and I'm completely quantum. And no, it's just I think that everything begins with an emotional event, and that sets the stage for the physical events, because it's so important to realize that we are affected by these events in our lives. I mean, as long as we're above ground, we're gonna have stress, right?
Mhm.
And it's how we perceive that stress that really makes the difference. Because I remember talking to my wife's uncle at his 95th birthday, Uncle Glenn. He was a famous portrait artist. I mean, if you saw his paintings, you'd say they were photographs. It was just amazing how gifted he was. And I really wanted to know. Here's a master. He's had a very full life. I said, Uncle Glenn, how do you deal with stress? And he looked at me with this kind of puzzled look on his face. He said, Morley, I don't have stress. I said, really? He said, well, whenever I'm confronted with a situation, I stop, I think about it, I solve it and I move on. I said, that is genius. So I was really, really quite taken by that. But I think it's important for people to realize that, it is a Mobius, physical, emotional. But I think that in this very charged world of ours now, I think so much of it is emotionally driven just because of the events that are taking place. But I think it would be interesting to get your perspective that if you were going to give people maybe 3 to 5 things to be looking out for, what should people be aware of that are warning lights that maybe they need to step back and go through this process to really release these charged events that they've experienced so that they can get on with their resilience. I would just be curious to know what would be the milestones or the warning lights that you would recommend for people to be aware of?
Right. So I think emotional intelligence is our ability to read our internal world
Yeah.
and to recognize when we might be shut down and experiencing depressed feelings, lack of joy, not very happy. Like I know we have a lot of information coming at us saying that it's not okay to be experiencing that.
Mhm.
And I would like us to just be aware of it and then again look for help by feeling comfortable to reach out for help. And I'm not necessarily a promoter of medication. I feel like that there's
Mhm.
natural approaches that can help
Right.
people, but I think we need to be honest with ourselves and recognize that hey, if I'm hanging out there, I might need some help. And there are skills and tools that I can learn and
Yeah.
develop through other
Yeah.
modalities and therapies that can really help alleviate those kinds of symptoms and to not internalize it and think that I'm bad or wrong if I'm having those symptoms. They are just symptoms of
That's right.
unresolved issues. And then you might be on the other side. You might be overreactive, a lot of anger. We're either really hot or
Mhm.
really cold uh, on the spectrum of our emotions. So if you notice that you're out of balance, be honest with
Yeah.
yourself
Yeah.
and come to a place of knowing that it's okay to reach out and get some assistance. So I think that willingness to be vulnerable, honest, and a willingness, which calibrates at 310, to look for answers, to continue to do research for yourself, to um, find out what does work for you. Some of us have different things that work for us with emotions. Um, when I get into one of those spaces, art helps me. So, a creative outlet,
Yeah. Good.
walking, uh, listening
Yeah.
to podcasts while I'm walking, doing journaling. All of these things can be so helpful to release the emotional congestion. Because what I'm working with and talking about is emotional congestion. When we
Yeah.
are emotionally congested and we're
Yeah.
barely hanging on, we need to find healthy, appropriate ways to cope and to release. Some of us are drawn to sodas or we eat more.
Right.
We can really try to make an effort to change our coping mechanisms. That's one of the things that I would suggest. The other thing is, you can reach out to us on our website at ihaofutah.com, and we provide services for all ages. I work with children, teenagers, adolescents, and adults. I have trained other facilitators and have a certification program where we have
Mhm.
lots of people that can help support you through an IPT session, and you can see if it's something that works for you. And then we also have curriculum on the website where we provide curriculum for emotional health uh, release systems that
Mhm.
can help as well. And then also, if there's, you might have your favorite therapist or get back in and do some work. Those kinds of things can help as well.
And in your experience, what typically is the stumbling block for getting people to deal with these issues? What are they resisting the most?
A lot of times they're resisting vulnerability.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
because we
Yeah.
work so hard in our humanness to avoid heavy feelings. Like we've been designed like that. And
Interesting.
we've been taught that. It's been modeled to us. And but my personality is one to lean into those emotions,
Right. I'm
to
the same way.
welcome them, to
Right.
understand them, and
Yeah.
to know that I'm going to feel better on the other side. So I think it's that first initial step into some of those heavier feelings. And we've spent years and lots of energy trying to avoid, resist, pretend like things aren't the way that they are, think that I'm just going to keep going forward and I'm just leaving my past behind me. And
Right.
I'm going to say that eventually in our lives, it catches up with us. And it usually manifests through, in relationships or poor health. And then
Right.
that's what gets our attention to start doing our work. And I'm saying do it, pass the ball before you have to. Do the work before there's a crisis situation. Take responsibility for it. My dad loved basketball, and he always talked to us and said, pass the ball before you have to.
That's a great technique. Absolutely. And what, in your experience, and this is kind of an unfair question, but is there a more prevalent symptom that people have when they have this congestion? Have you noticed, or is it all over the map?
Well, there
Like
can
just
be a lot of different symptoms when people have stuff surfacing, but some of the common things are fatigue,
yeah,
or
right.
and poor health, not feeling good, again, lack of joy. Um, and so people on this spectrum either move to being so congested that they're shut down
Right.
and not functioning in life. Maybe you're in bed. Maybe
Yeah.
you're like not functioning physically. There can be emotional components that when they're freed, energy can be restored, motivation can be restored, passion can be restored. And then, or you may be highly reactive,
Hmm.
angry at
Right.
the driver in front of you, lack of patience, no tolerance, lack of compassion or empathy, and not really being able to have compassion for yourself or others. And that
Hmm.
can show up, and we're all striving to increase our ability to be kind. We're wanting to work from the prefrontal cortex, which is our capacity to forgive, to bring forward more love for self and others. These are the products, the fruits of the process are more emotional maturity, patience, more tolerance, lack or less judgment and criticism towards self, and a capacity to love self and others. That's the fruit of doing our work. And my message is we all have stuff, and we all could be engaging in the emotional realm and doing some of the unpacking so that the lines that run after us, the people, the children that come after us, that those lines run more clean and pure
Absolutely. Yeah.
without the generational patterns and that have been modeled to us that tend to be abusive or that
Yeah.
tend to be neglectful or not really expressing our love to each other in the ways that we can. That's the fruit of doing the emotional work.
So people are so used to doing their dental floss. What you're encouraging people to do is emotional floss, right?
Yes, emotional flossing. And I say even emotional showering. It's like
Okay,
when we're
there you
so
go.
congested, our
Right.
energy field is dark and we're not happy or joyful. And when we let go of this, our light starts to shine a little bit more. And those emotional showers or emotional flossing makes a really
Mm,
big difference.
that's great. Well, I think that's probably a great place for us to end this conversation. And hopefully this will be the first of several. But I think what you've done is you've laid out a very powerful template for people to understand, um, where they're gonna encounter challenges in their life. They need to be able to be open to resolution, to be willingness, the willing to surrender to the process. Because I think
Yeah.
that's half the battle, is just knowing that there is first of all, knowing that there is a process. But then when you surrender to it, it's a beautiful moment when you realize that the process itself is going to carry you forward. At least that's what I've experienced in the sessions that I've done.
I love
And so
that.
I'm very grateful for the work that you've done and how you shared that with others. So I want to thank you for your time. Is there any parting comments that you would have for our community, that you would want to make sure they know how to get a hold of you? You shared your website. Any other tidbits or pearls that you want to share with the folks on
Sure.
our end?
So I have written a couple of books, and the first book that I wrote was called The Bright Red Bow. And it does have my story in there
Yeah.
as to my early processing and what I was going through personally. It also has all the steps of the process, and it has the color chart, the meanings of the colors, what they mean when you're pulling them out at the beginning, when you're letting go of the heavy feelings, and what it means when you replace those heavy feelings.
Mhm.
For example, black was the first color that I was letting go of, and but on the negative side, it means old generational patterns. But on the positive side, it's energy that feeds the brain, helps us
Mm.
uh, access intelligence and creative problem solving. So these colors, are very helpful. And then you can again contact us. You can get the books or sign up for certification courses, coming to a
Mhm.
weekend training to learn the steps of the process, or even for an individual session at ihaofutah.com. And we look forward to being able to offer services to you and to support you through on your emotional journey and your emotional healing. And Morley,
That's-
thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, absolutely. Delighted. I'm going to be out here in your neck of the woods in October. Maybe we can have a face-to-face chat as well. So look forward to
Thank
that.
you.
So thank you very much for your taking the time and sharing your wisdom and your experiences. And I know that our community is going to be very grateful for this conversation. So I wish you well and enjoy the coming fall. It's just days away. At least here in North Carolina, we're getting a real change in the weather. So it's kind of nice.
I love that. Thank you
Excellent.
again and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. Thank you.